Hello, my dear gardening friends. Today in this video we are going to talk about a frame of care for our roses in spring. I understand that we garden in different regions, we use different products in our garden, but the language of our plants in spring is almost the same everywhere we live. And our reaction on plants is basically the same. For example, a lot of rosarians, a lot of gardeners, when they see this beautiful, lush foliage of our roses in spring, don't they look magnificent? Right now it is raining and I'm hiding under this canopy of this beautiful, generous gardener rose from the rain. But when we look at this beautiful, lush, baby new foliage with not a hint of a disease, we sometimes forget that spring is the time when we have to start addressing issues of later illnesses and later pests. Also, there are basically several things we need to do for our roses in spring in order to secure beautiful blooms later. So stay tuned and let's talk about roses. So by this time, we have the beginning of May. By this time, I already went ahead, I did the winter treatment of my roses, and it is optional for a lot of gardeners. I know that a lot of gardeners don't do it. I do it, and it helps me to control black spot and all sorts of scale diseases and aphids, I believe. What I do, I use dormant horticultural oil, and here's, by the way, here's a link how I'm doing it. I go in depth into that, I'm showing you. And then I leave my roses sometime alone. And then in April, I start my active care of roses. I have a very good resource, which is provided to all the rosarians by David Austin website. Actually, I'm not sure if you can find it on their website. Maybe you can, but it comes in the catalog of David Austin, which we receive, we rosarians in America. We receive it in March, I believe. And at the back of that catalog is a diagram, a map of USA, where David Austin divides all the regions of America in major parts and addresses the care of roses which is needed for each region. I find that resource very helpful. And by the way, if you don't have David Austin catalog, you can go on David Austin website and subscribe. It will arrive for free. Usually it's very fashionable, a very interesting catalog. So when you look at this map of USA, it gives you your section where you live and what care should be given to your roses in that area where you live. Again, we have to understand that we have different microclimates, and we know that, but I find this reference very important. So for me, I belong to Northeast. I garden in Connecticut zone 6-7. So for me, the care for my roses would be, roses wake up in March. Before that, I treat roses with horticultural oil, dormant horticultural oil. Then when roses wake up in March, I give them a trim. By the way, here's a video how I did it on one of my roses, my display rose I call it, my Lady of Shalott rose. And after that, when the weather warms up a little bit, we give our roses first feeding. And a lot of us use different food for our roses. That's understandable. Some of us are preferring to use artificial stuff. Some of us use natural stuff. I firmly believe that natural stuff is better, but it's just my opinion, you know. I can come up as an opinionated gardener here. So I don't use artificial stuff in the soil in my garden. I only use artificial food for my plants in pots. So then in April, for my region, we feed our roses, and I also like to do mulch on my roses. What mulch does is it protects the roots of the rose from fluctuating temperatures. And why I do not apply mulch too early, because I want the soil to warm up. If I apply mulch too quickly, it can prevent soil from warming up. And I want that soil to become warm for all the activities in the soil to start going, and my rose will be waking up from its dormancy and start growing. Now, very important to know, if you planted your rose in the fall, it means your rose was not fed in the fall. You know, when you planted your new baby rose in the fall, you don't want to fertilize it because you don't want it to start growing in freezing conditions. So you leave the rose alone and you let it go into dormancy. So in spring, it's very important to fertilize your rose on time following the fertilization schedule. But with me, when I have my roses planted long time ago, and in my garden I didn't plant any rose in the fall last year, my roses can kind of wait if I don't have time. I can let the roses go a week or two without food, which is not a biggie because they do have plenty of natural food which I gave them in the fall. And by the way, here's another link how I prepare my roses for the winter. After April comes May. And what do we do with roses in May? What's important in rose care in May? Well, the thing is, in May is a time when we are proactive in fighting all the diseases which might plague our roses later in the season. Again, right now, look at my beautiful leaves of my generous gardener. My generous gardener is developing a lovely canopy, and I love spring because all rose leaves are so fresh and so beautiful, and there is no hint of diseases. Well, mind you, if I am not going to be proactive with my other roses, generous gardener is very disease resistant and I don't spray it. Very often I even don't spray it at all. But other roses, Lady of Shalott is somewhat sensitive to black spot, and since I'm using in my garden organic products, they are very often they are preventive, meaning you can't use them when the disease is settled on the rose. And here, because I'm trying to be an organic gardener and I'm not trying to use heavy stuff on my plants. I want to keep my soil healthy and my plants healthy in my soil and fight their own diseases and live their own life. Because what do I know about their lifestyle and what's happening in their root system and all that stuff? So I'm letting roses decide for themselves what they want. I just make sure that I provide basic good care to keep soil healthy. So what I do, how I try to protect my roses from black spot. And by the way, black spot is the most wildly spread disease, rose disease in the world. And it is a plague in my garden too. So you can go both ways. You can go either buy yourself roses which are highly black spot resistant. For example, the generous gardener is. And my rose, Queen of Sweden, in the front is also very disease resistant. And both these roses, their characteristic is that they have very shiny, leathery foliage. You see how nice and shiny these leaves are right now? Well, later they turn into a little leathery, darker color. Not the most appealing one, but I give it to Generous Gardener because Generous Gardener looks so nice in spring and it is really disease resistant. But my other roses are really sensitive to black spot. So what I do, I start spraying my roses in May. Here is a picture of Maine Institute. I believe it's Maine Horticultural Institute, I'm not sure. You will see it on the screen. But these are verified, certified products to use on black spot. And the first pick, and on the top you will see traditional ones. And oh gosh, that traditional list is full of heavy things which you can use on your roses. Definitely you can use those sprays when you see a disease there, but those are heavy things and I stay away from them. Those are not natural things. They get into the soil and all sorts of stuff. But the second portion of this diagram, you see other alternative methods, and among them is neem oil, which I like to use. But if you look at neem oil, you can see that it's preventive, meaning you have to treat your roses early enough while they have this beautiful shiny foliage before you see a disease, otherwise it will be too late. So basically for me, May is the time of spraying. I spray, I'm not very particular, scheduling my spraying days. For example, look at this, it's raining. So, and it's raining, it's going to rain like this maybe today and tomorrow. So this is a perfect weather. It's fairly warm. It's a perfect weather for black spot to start growing. We won't see it, but it is actively growing after a period of wet weather. So when you have a long chunk of wet weather, after that, go ahead and spray your roses with neem oil. That's what I'm going to do in 2 days. I will just go around and do a spray on all my sensitive roses, I call them. This guy probably wouldn't spray. If I will have leftover of neem oil mix in my tank, I probably will give this row a spray, but otherwise, this guy is fighting his own battles and he's doing quite well here. Look at him. He is happy and the canopy is developing so well. You know what? Last year we had a nest here. The cardinals had their nest. And I had to give this rose a big... I had to rejuvenate this rose because it was getting too much congestion. There was too much congestion was happening here. So I took away a lot of older limbs. And I had to take that nest away. So because I took it away and put it back, it didn't survive through the winter. And I don't see cardinals building their nest back. But they're around in the garden. We have a bird feeder and I see a lot of beautiful cardinal, female and male cardinals here around. So I hope maybe when this rose put a nice canopy, maybe cardinals will remember, maybe the babies who were born here will remember that they were growing up in this spot and they will decide to build a nest again. But I'm diverting about cardinals. So in May, it's all about proactive care of roses. We want our roses to be healthy later. And even if now they look very healthy and beautiful, we do have to spray. Again, people are using different products and stronger products, more natural products. It's up to the gardener. I'm a big advocate for natural stuff. And because I'm an advocate for natural stuff, and if you won't decide to go that way, it means you have to use it more often, and it's preventive, meaning you have to act before you see a disease. So basically now you start spraying your roses according to the label. I believe neem oil is from 7 to 14 days you can use it, the intervals, every 7 to 14 days. So after every rain, heavy rain, or this drizzle like it is right now, I will be using it. And hopefully my roses are going to stay okay. And with such schedule and such care, my Lady of Shalott, which is the oldest rose in my garden, never got defoliated to the point of that it threatened the health of the rose. It got some loss of leaves at the bottom at the end of fall, but then it kind of cooperated with it, kind of overcame it, started growing new shoots and build up again foliage, and we kind of live with that to the end of the season. So I can say that in my garden, black spot exists. It's not going nowhere, and I'm just keeping it at bay, you know. And I think that so far I managed to avoid with my roses any major super problems of infestation of who knows what. And I really think it because I'm not using any artificial stuff. I'm investing a lot in improving soil, keeping my soil very healthy, and letting my plants fight their own battles the way they know. And I think that plants know better what they have to do and what they're doing in that soil. So that's it. Happy gardening. I will see you next time. I said my word.